In a town called Ed, there lived a wealthy merchant called Taio. He was married to Isoma, a poor homeless but beautiful lady he saw sleeping on the street in her village. Many years ago, Isa was the first daughter of her mother, who gave birth to 6 other children. Isa's father died prematurely, transferring the burden of the family to his wife, who was just a mega storekeeper. Everyone in her family looked up to her. Taio had a delivery to make the night. He saw her sleeping on the street. His van had broken down during the journey, so he arrived at Ayamu, which was Isa's village, very late in the night. He was shocked when he saw her out in the cold and woke her up. "Young lady, why are you sleeping outside by this time of the night? Don't you know how dangerous this village can be?" Isa yawned and stretched her limbs. Rubbing her eyes, she looked up at Tai. "I don't have a choice. My mother is sistered. I slept with I'm older man. Or leave her house. Your mother. How can she be that cruel? Life has been hard. I'm willing to do anything to help my family, but I cannot sell my dignity and pride." Taiwan was moved by her dignifying words. He asked Hisa to sleep in his van and promised to take her home the following day. Tian looked responsible, so Is believed him. She followed him into his van and slept at the back of the van till the next morning. In the morning, Tao delivered his goods and took Isa back to our house. When they got to Isa's home, her mother was seated on a chair outside the house, while Isa's siblings were sweeping the house immediately. The woman saw Isa. She charged at her. "You stupid and good for child, what are you doing? Didn't I ask you to never return to this house if you can't do what I have asked of you?" Tai was marveled at her mother's reaction. He found it unbelievable that a mother could be this unreasonable. Isa, who was scared of her mother, quickly hid behind Taio. But that did not stop her mother. She charged further in an attempt to grab Isa from behind Taio, but he rebuked her and left with Isa. When they returned to his van, Isa began to cry. "I cannot do what she's asking of me. I cannot send my body to an old man for money, and I have nowhere to go. Don't cry anymore. I would help you. My name is Tu, and I am a merchant. I come from a town called Adir. Perhaps you could come with me." Isior leapt for joy. When Tai will offer to take her along with him, she threw herself in his arms and thanked him profusely. When they got to Adir, Taio was well known by all. He would stop his van at every G to give the less privilege some money. Everyone knew him and appreciated his personality. When they got to Tai's house, it was a very big modern house. His house stood different from the other houses Is had seen Taiwan. Notice that Isa had no clue, so he took her to a very nice boutique to get her new clothes and shoes. After that, he took her to a hairstylist to get her hair done and her nails as well. When they were done, Isman looked like a princess, and Taiwa was pleased with what he saw. The next day, Taiwa went to the market for business and left his wife at home. When Taio returned from the market, in the evening he was shocked when he entered his house. Everywhere was so neat, not a speck of dust could be found on his furnitures. He could even perceive the sweet aroma of food from the dining table. When he got to the dining table, he discovered that there was hot cooked food. Immediately, he sat down. Is showed up and welcomed him. She brought him a bowl of water for him to wash his hands. Taio was fished, so he started eating immediately after he had finished eating. He quickly took his bath and slept off. The next day was a Sunday, and Taio doesn't trade on Sundays. When he woke up, he staggered into the kitchen and found each sumer preparing breakfast. She wore a skimpy dress which cleaved to her body. Taio was instantly seduced by her. "Sheep, thanks a lot for yesterday. Is my name is, and I remember you told me your name is Taio." "Yes, my name is Taio. You're a very good cook and a good housekeeper." "Oh, thank you, Mr. Tai. I learned a few delicacies from my mother. I was worried you may not like the food." "Oh, no. I loved it. In fact, it is my favorite meal." whenever I visit your village, and please call me Tai. You don't need to add the Mr. I'm not married yet. Why, you're wealthy, handsome and kind. Any woman would die to have a man like you. Really, how about you? Would you die to have a man like me? Is laughed at his question and told him to wait in the dining room so she could serve him breakfast. But Tai couldn't get the sight of Is cleavages out of his sight. His thought had been infiltrated by the shape of her body. He lay on the bed that night and thought deeply and hard. He truly was rich and handsome. Perhaps he could take Isa as his wife the next morning. Taio asked Isa if she would like to be his wife. Is didn't hesitate. She quickly said yes. Compared to where she was coming from, Tai's house was like heaven on earth that night. Isa decided to serve Tao's dinner in his bedroom. The moment Taio saw her in his room, he lost control over himself, and he slept with as he found that she was a vision, and this made him love her so much. He made sure that Isa lacked nothing, and he did all that was within his power to make her happy. A few months later, Isa found out that she was pregnant. She told Taio and insisted that he must see her mother and pay her bride price so she can be formally known as his wife. Taio loved Isa too much, so he did as she asked. Her mother gave him a list full of ridiculous items, but Taio didn't mind. He bought them all and paid her DIY, and then he took her home as his wife. After their marriage, Isa's mother and siblings would always ask Isa for money, and she would always give them. Taiwan knew of this, but he loved Is too much, so he didn't care, since his business was moving fine and the money was coming. Isma gave birth to a bouncing baby girl, and Taio threw a feast to celebrate his first child. He also bought Isa her when the child turned 5. Taio threw another feast, celebrate her 5th birthday. He had left his drink on the table and went to eat himself. In his absence, one of his friends, who was envious of his achievements, poisoned his drink. Taio trusted people too much and too easily, and he gagged down the drink. When he returned 2 weeks after his daughter's birthday, Taio became very sick. He was admitted into the hospital and had to spend a lot of money on his treatment. His business suffered huge losses, and he had to rely on his savings to sort himself out medically. Isa was supportive at first, but then her mother began to dissuade her because Isama was no longer sending them money. As time went by, with Taio still on the sick bed, Isa started to change. Gradually, she stopped seeing Taio as often as before in the hospitals, and her personality was altered. Tai could observe her displeasure. He knew she wasn't happy, but he always encouraged her to be patient with him. 6 months into the ailments, and Tai had sold everything he had. In a bit, to cure the illness, he was left with nothing and was completely broke. All he had left was his house. Isa couldn't tolerate him anymore. She fully became rude to him. She stopped being caring and compassionate. One day, Isa was on her way to the mall. She stood on the road, waiting for a commercial taxi, having sold her car and that of our husband to raise money for his treatment. A luxurious car stopped in front of her and offered to give her a ride. At first, she wanted to refuse, but then she thought about how Taio was and decided to enter the car. The man introduced himself as Alar Wasum, and Isa told him her name. When they got to the mall, Was followed her into the mall and paid for everything she bought and more. After that, they went back to the car. He told Is all about himself. I am an an exporter of special stores. IP in love with you. The moment I saw you standing by the roadside, I really like you each summer, and I want to marry you. I like you too. Was thank you for everything you bought for me. I wish I could accept your proposal, but I am married. I don't care. Tell me how much it will cost and I will. I have enough money to buy you anything you want. Please think about. Mia Isa laughed at his boast and promised him that she would think about it immediately. Isa got home. She got a call from her mother asking her to send some money because one of her siblings was sick but had no money to send. She started to consider Wasil's proposal. After much thought, she decided to leave Taio. She met Taio at the hospital and told him, I don't think I can remain married to you anymore. I have needs and you cannot meet them. My love, Please be patient with me. This is just a ph. It will pass. Please don't call me that anymore. I am not your love. What about our daughter? You can keep her. She's all yours. Is stunned out of the hospital. Ignoring the pleas of Taio and her little daughter, she went ahead to meet Wasil, and they got married. Wasil threw a lavish wedding, an even bigger one than the one that Tai did. A lot of prominent personalities were in attendance. Wasil gave as his mother the total cost of everything Taio paid for Isa's diary, and she returned it to him. You foolish and wretched man, here is the peanut you gave to me as dye for my daughter. A man who knows her true what and can afford it has come for her. Please don't ever let me set my eyes on you again. After saying this, she threw the money at him and left his house, ignoring her granddaughter as well. Moved in with Wasil, and indeed, Wasil was 10 times wealthier than Taio. He spent money lavishly, unlike Taio, who was meticulous, and didn't care if Wasil's source of money was genuine or not. All she cared about was that the money kept coming with the diary. Isa's mother returned. Taio underwent surgery and recovered completely. He took a loan from the bank and started life afresh. Within few months, he was able to build back his business and brought everything he previously sold. When he was sick, Taio had decided not to take another wife, so he focused all his attention on his daughter and gave her all the love she needed. He made sure his daughter didn't miss. Her mother Wasil and Isa had a beautiful marriage, but it didn't last long. The Institute of Financial Crimes Commission tracked down Wasil for money laundering and closed down his businesses. Isima was pregnant for him. When it happened, Wasil was charged to court and sentenced to 15 years imprisonment. All his assets were confiscated and his accounts were frozen. Isa was left with nothing other than her pregnancy. She had no one to take care of herself. Because she never saved for any days, her mother began to mock and frustrate her. She blamed Iso for leaving Taio behind and called her all sort of name. Every day as shamefully went back to Taio to plead for his forgiveness. She went on her knees with her protruding stomach and begged him. But Tai had already taken in another wife who was better industrious and compassionate. Please forgive me, my love. I'm sorry for the way I treated you. My mother was the architect of my behavior towards. I'm not your love anymore. I have forgiven you, but I cannot take you back into my life because I will not make the same mistake twice. Their daughter entered the house and ran to hug her father. She had grown so big and beautiful and just returned from school. My daughter, she hold your mother. You're not my mother anymore. You pushed me away, ignored, and abandoned me. When I begged you to stay, I have a new mother now, who loves me and truly cheers me, is left Tao's house in regrets. Her mother, whom she spent so much money on, refused to accommodate her, and her siblings equally abandoned her. She learned her lesson the hard way. Eventually she gave birth to a bouncing baby boy and gave him to the offer, AG. But the shock of what she had faced affected her mentally, so she was admitted into a psychiatric hospital, where she frequently told the tale of how she threw away a precious diamond in exchange for a stone. The moral lesson of this story makes us understand that we make our own decisions, and we alone will bear the consequences. When we are fortunate to be lifted up from the dust, we should always remember where we came from and appreciate the hand that fed us. Patience is virtue, and no situation would remain the same, for ever loyalty is not tasted in plenty, but in scarcity.